We are coming in for a landing with this book. Here at chapter 36, we have Edna going to a garden. So there's a garden out in the suburbs, and I don't know if this is necessarily the suburbs like we think of suburbs today, but it's more on the outskirts of the city of New Orleans. It's a small leafy corner with a few green tables under orange trees. An old cat sleeps there. There's a woman who works there, and a mulatresse, which is like a mulatto woman who has a little cafe. And it says here that the place was too modest to attract the attention of people of fashion, and so quiet as to have escaped the notice of those in search of pleasure and dissipation. So right away, this seems to me like there's symbolism in the place itself. It's not part of her society. It is a garden, which, is somehow separate from everything else. So it's a place maybe where she can be 100% herself, a place of honesty and truth. I think of nature as a restorative element in our lives. So just a lot of things here jump out as sort of symbolic. She sees sight of a little green table. I think to myself, green means go. Green also is another reference to nature. And she talks about the fact that she stops here often when she goes out walking. She'll bring a book with her. Sometimes she'll have dinner there and tell Celestine not to make supper, and she'll purchase something from this woman who has this small cafe. So it was the last place in the city where she would have expected to meet anyone she knew. Still, she was not astonished when, as she was partaking of a modest dinner late in the afternoon, looking into an open book, stroking the cat, which had made friends with her, she was not greatly astonished to see Robert come in at the tall garden gate. So now I'm thinking this is even more symbolic. So she doesn't expect to see people she knows, but Robert is a different story. So this tells me they are genuinely alike. They are of the same mind. Does this mean they belong together? Is a natural question. I am destined to see you only by accident, she says to him. He, on the other hand, is surprised and ill at ease, almost embarrassed at meeting her there. Do you come here often, he asks? And she says, I almost live here. So this is where she's making her spiritual home, her emotional home. And he says, well, I used to drop in here for a cup of Katisha's coffee. This is the name of the woman who owns the cafe. There's always enough for two, even three, says Edna. Get a plate and you can share my dinner. So when people eat together, this is, I don't know if any of you have read that book, How to Read Literature Like a Professor, but some of these things are like heavy-handed ways that authors tell us as readers that something is important. When people share a meal together, that's like communion. So she tells him, you will share my dinner. Get a plate. There's more than enough. Her resolve, she had told herself to be determined and not, be gushing when she meets him. She had intended to be indifferent and as reserved as he when she met him. This is something she would have told herself earlier, just because, she can tell there's like a difference between how they talk to each other. But as soon as she sees him, her resolve melts away and she's brutally honest with him. She says, why have you kept away from me? And Robert says, well, you are so personal. Like, why are you asking me these personal questions? And then he gives in right away and says, I suppose it's no use telling you I've been busy or that I've been sick or that I've been to see you and not found you at home. Let me off with one of these excuses. He doesn't want to tell her the truth. And she says, you are selfish. You save yourself something, I don't know what, but there is some selfish motive, and in sparing yourself, you never consider for a moment what I think or how I feel your neglect and indifference. I suppose this is what you would call unwomanly, but I have got into a habit of expressing myself. It doesn't matter to me, and you may think me unwomanly if you like. So she's like, why are you not telling me the truth? Why are you so closed with me? And he says, I think you're cruel. Maybe not intentionally, but you seem to be forcing me into disclosures which can result in nothing. If you would have me bear a wound for the pleasure of looking at it without the intention or power of healing it. So what is he talking about here? He's talking about his feelings for her. She keeps pushing him to like openly disclose how much he loves her. And he says that is like looking at a wound that there's no way to heal. And so she sort of backs off. She's like, I'm spoiling your dinner. Never mind what I say. You haven't eaten a morsel. And he says, well, I only came for coffee. His sensitive face was all disfigured with excitement. So he's upset. And she changes the subject. She's trying not to make him feel bad. Isn't this a delightful place? I'm so glad it has never been discovered. It's so quiet and sweet. Do you notice that there's scarcely a sound? So she just sort of starts kind of chattering away. And he says, Katisha's coffee is always hot. I don't know how she manages it here in the open. She says this. Celestine's coffee gets cold, bringing it from the kitchen to the dining room. He goes ahead and has a smoke. She says, are you going to smoke? And he says, after a while, and he lays a cigar on the table. And then she sort of, teases him. Who gave it to you? She's thinking about that Mexican woman. I bought it, he says. I suppose I'm getting reckless. I bought a whole box. She was determined not to be personal again and make him uncomfortable. So she's trying to just like make conversation. So it's awkward for sure. The cat makes friends with him, climbs into his lap when he smokes his cigar. And so they sort of finish their evening and he walks her home. She did not ask him to remain, which he was grateful for. But that might make you think he's going to leave without going in, and that's not the case. It made him grateful because it permitted him to stay without the discomfort of blundering through an excuse which he had no intention of considering. So it's like if she asked him to stay, he would feel like the proper thing to do would be to say no, but he wants to stay. So like he'd have to sort of like say no and go in anyway, which would be contradictory, but this way he can just go in. So I thought that was funny because after all this, like he doesn't want to express himself. He doesn't want to say what he feels for her and be honest with her. But at the same time, he wants to go in her house. So he goes in, he helps her light the lamp. She goes to take off her hat and wash her face and hands from being outside. When she comes back, Robert was not examining the pictures and magazines. Instead, he was sitting off in the shadow, leaning his head back on the chair as if in a reverie. So he's just like sitting back and thinking. Edna lingered a moment beside the table, arranging the books there. Then she went across the room to where he was. She says, Robert, are you asleep? And he says, no. Then look what happens. She leaned over and kissed him. So she made the first move. So she's another sign of her awakening, being a bold, assertive woman. A soft, cool, delicate kiss whose voluptuous sting penetrated his whole being. Then she moved away from him. He followed and took her in his arms, just holding her close to him. She put her head up to his face and pressed his cheek against her own. The action was full of love and tenderness. So they have this moment. So I was thinking to myself, when you think about Alcé Arobin, the first moves he made on Edna were to kiss her hand, to kiss her shoulder. She goes right in for the real kiss, and he immediately responds. So they have now told each other that they love each other. And he says it then. Now you know. Now you know what I have been fighting against since last summer at Grand Isle, what drove me away and drove me back again. Why have you been fighting it? She asked. Her face is glowing with soft lights. Why? Because you were not free. You were Leonce Pontellier's wife. And of course she still is. So he's a gentleman to the minute he is. He's like, no, I am not going to go after someone else's wife. He has boundaries, unlike Alcé Arobin. He says when he was in Mexico, he was thinking about her all the time, longing for her. She's like, yeah, not writing to me. She still doesn't get it. Like if he were to write to her, that would be basically putting salt on the wound. You know, he's trying to forget her. And she's something put into my head that you cared for me, and I lost my senses. I forgot everything but a wild dream of yours some way becoming my wife. So Robert admits it. He's like, I thought about you to the point where I imagined marrying you. And Edna says, your wife? I mean, she doesn't understand, like, this kind of love would consummate in a marriage. And he says, religion, loyalty, everything would give way if only you cared. Then you must have forgotten that I was Leonce Pontellier's wife. Oh, I was demented, dreaming of wild, impossible things, recalling men who had set their wives free. We have heard of such things. So he imagines like that Leonce would say, here, you can have her. We'll get divorced so you two can be together. She doesn't understand. Like, she would need to divorce her husband. Like, they can't just have an affair. And so, I mean, they can, but that's not the kind of person Robert is. And so he's like, I came back with vague, mad intentions. And when I got here, and she's like, yes, when you got here, you never came to see me. She's still giving him a hard time about that. He says, I realized what a cur I was to dream of such a thing, even if you had been willing. Like, it's just wrong. So this man has morals, which is a good thing. She took his face between her hands and looked into it as if she would never withdraw her eyes more. She kissed him on the forehead, the eyes, the cheeks, and the lips. And she says, you have been a very, very foolish boy, wasting your time dreaming of impossible things. When you speak of Mr. Pontellier setting me free, I am no longer one of Mr. Pontellier's possessions to dispose of or not. I give myself where I choose. If he were to say, here, Robert, take her and be happy, she is yours, I would laugh at you both. Okay, what is she saying here? She is still Mr. Pontellier's wife, but she's saying if Mr. Pontellier was like, here, you guys can be together, she would laugh. She doesn't want to belong to anyone. Just remember, she wants to do what she wants to do, and she doesn't care about convention. So this makes me think she just wants to have an affair with him. She just wants to be with him and keep her husband at a distance. That's what I would expect. He's confused. He's like, what do you mean? Fair question. There was a knock on the door. Old Celestine came in to say that Madame Ratignolle's servant had come around back with a message that Madame had taken sick and begged Mrs. Pontellier to go to her immediately. Okay, so remember, Madame Ratignolles snuck over to see Edna just a few days prior, said, please come and see me again. She's trying to sort of pull her back into the circle of friendship, away from this folly that she seems to have about living by herself. So now she's ill and calling Mrs. Pontellier to come. And she says, yes, tell her I will come. And Robert says, I'll walk you over. And she says, no, I'll go with the servant. And then she says, goodbye, my sweet Robert. Tell me goodbye. He kisses her with a degree of passion which had not before entered into his caress, and strained her to him. I love you, she whispered. Only you, no one but you. It was you who woke me last summer out of a lifelong stupid dream. So he was the catalyst for her awakening. She realized that, here's somebody who she could love more as an equal, where they could be together in a more organic, genuine way versus just like, I'm a wife of this certain man who has chosen me. I know we talked briefly about, is it kind of a cop-out for her to be like searching for independence by just choosing a different man? I mean, everyone deserves to have a partner in life. There's nothing wrong or like unindependent in not having in having a partner. I mean, she's not suddenly, not her own person just because she has a partner. And yes, perhaps having a more authentic partner would be more of an independent choice. But it's not like today we would say in 2025, you don't need a partner to be a whole person necessarily. But it is just recognizing that, she had a more genuine love for him that helped her realize, like, I should be my own person. He literally, I mean, he's like super emotional now. He's like, please don't go. Stay with me. Why should you go? Stay with me. And she says, I'll come back and I will find you here. So she's like, you stay here and wait and I will come back. So then she goes into the drugstore. Monsieur Ratignolle, remember, he owns a drugstore, was putting up a mixture himself very carefully and dropping a red liquid into a tiny glass. He was grateful to Edna for having come. Her presence would be a comfort to his wife, Madame Ratignolle's sister, who had always been with her at such trying times, had not been able to come up from the plantation, and Adele had been inconsolable until Mrs. Pontellier so kindly promised to come to her. So this is, I just wrote, this is interesting. Like, what exactly are these trying times? Like, what kind of an illness does she have? These are the thoughts that go through my mind at this point. Edna runs upstairs. The children are all sleeping. Madame Ratignolle was in the salon where she had strayed in her suffering and patience. She sat on the sofa, clad in an ample white peignoir, so she's in a nightgown, holding a handkerchief tight in her hand with a nervous clutch. I'm like, is she having a nervous breakdown? Is she having anxiety? What's going on? Her face was drawn and pinched, her sweet blue eyes haggard and unnatural. All her beautiful hair had been drawn back and plaited. It lay in a long braid. The nurse, a comfortable-looking Griff woman. Okay, so it says here that a Griff woman is an offspring of a mulatto of either a black or an American Indian. But my other book, which I know I've shown all of you, this one, which is a bigger version, it has more notes and things in it, says that actually this word is used to describe someone who is 3/4 black. So during this time period, remember, it's, Reconstruction. We have some Jim Crow laws still going on. There's a lot of like classification of blacks. And so in New Orleans in particular, where there's the Creole element and there's just a lot of sort of international flavor and influence in people. We have American Indians, we have blacks, we have French and Spanish, lots of different things. They definitely have names to sort of describe different degrees of blackness, and that's what this is referring to here. Mandalay, she says, get rid of him. So remember, Mandalay, Dr. Mandalay is the doctor who's not really a doctor anymore. He should be retired, but he still thinks he's a doctor. He said he would be here at 7:30. It must be 8. Like, where's the doctor? She's like, when he gets here, tell him to leave. He's a waste of time. So Madame Ratignolle is very cranky. The woman was possessed of a cheerful nature and refused to take any situation too seriously, especially a situation with which she was so familiar. So this would be like Josephine, her like attendant. So apparently Madame Ratignolle has these kind of episodes a lot. She urged Madame to have courage and patience, but Madame only set her teeth hard into her underlip, and Edna saw the sweat gather in beads on her forehead. After a moment or two, she uttered a profound sigh and wiped her face with the handkerchief rolled in a ball. She appeared exhausted. The nurse gave her a fresh handkerchief sprinkled with cologne water. This is too much. Mandalay ought to be killed. Where is Alphonse? That's her husband. Is it possible I am abandoned like this? Okay, so what is going on? I'm just going to tell you right now. She's in labor. Okay, so there's not really a whole lot here that makes it clear to us what she's suffering with. You may have forgotten that she's even pregnant. Back in chapter 4, we had a reference to the fact that every 2 years, Madame Ratignolle has a baby, and that she was making baby clothes again. So we're supposed to infer that she's pregnant again. That's why she's always saying, focus on the children. She has babies every 2 years. She is pregnant and she is giving birth. And I think it becomes really clear here because Edna wants to leave. What's happening here, she's having contractions. That's why she's sweating. That's why she's so cranky. Edna begins to feel uneasy. She was seized with a vague dread. Her own like experiences seemed far away, unreal, and only half remembered. She recalled faintly an ecstasy of pain, the heavy odor of chloroform, a stupor which had deadened sensation, and an awakening to find a little new life to which she had given being, added to the great unnumbered multitude of souls that come and go. So she remembering her own birth of her own children. Edna's like, she's had 2 children and she knows what that feels like. So this reference here, I think, makes it clear that this is what's happening to Madame Ratignolle. So she doesn't need to be there. The doctor has shown up, but Edna did not go. Like she knows her friend wants her to stay. With an inward agony, with a flaming outspoken revolt against the ways of nature, she witnessed the scene of torture. So she literally watches her friend have a baby, which she doesn't want to do. Fair enough. I mean, it's definitely hard to watch. She was still stunned and speechless with emotion when later she leaned over her friend to kiss her and softly say goodbye. Adele, pressing her cheek, whispered in an exhausted voice, "Think of the children, Edna. Think of the children." So always like that moral reminder, don't do things against your family. So she heads home. She's eager, I'm sure, to go home. Dr. Mandalay walks with her. As he's walking, he tries to figure out what's going on with her. He empathizes with her feelings. "You shouldn't have been there, Mrs. Pontellier. That was no place for you. Adele is full of whims at such times. There were a dozen women she might have had with her, unimpressionable women. I felt that it was cruel. You shouldn't have gone." Like, so he's sort of referring to the fact that she's delicate, because remember, he has talked to Mr. Pontellier and has like already made some judgment about Edna. Oh, well, she's like, it doesn't matter. Whatever. She's just like, I'm over it now. He asks when Leonce's coming back, and she says sometime in March. And he asks her if she's going to go abroad, and she starts by saying perhaps, and then she changes her mind. She says, "No, I'm not going. I'm not going to be forced into doing something I don't want to do. I don't want to go abroad. I want to be let alone. Nobody has any right, except children perhaps. And even then, it seems to me, or it did seem, like maybe not always." She doesn't finish her sentence. So the doctor's like, "Well, the trouble is that youth is given up to illusions. It seems to be a provision of nature, a decoy to secure mothers for the race. And nature takes no account of moral consequences, of arbitrary conditions which we create and which we feel obliged to maintain at any cost." So he's referring to like the expectations put upon her. "Yes," she's like, "the years that are gone seem like dreams, if one might go on sleeping and dreaming." She's like, yeah, it's all a blur because it doesn't mean anything. And then he's so condescending. "It seems to me, my dear child, you seem to me to be in trouble. I'm not going to ask you for your confidence. I will only say that if you ever feel moved to give it to me, I could help you." He's like, "I know I'm not going to tell you. You have to tell me your troubles. But if you wanted to, I could help you. I know I would understand. And I tell you, there are not many who would." So he's like, I am unique. I get it. Who knows? "Some way I don't feel moved to speak of things that trouble me," she says. "Don't think I'm ungrateful or that I don't appreciate your sympathy. There are periods of despondency and suffering which take possession of me, but I don't want anything but my own way. That is wanting a good deal, of course. I shouldn't want to trample upon the little lives." Like, she doesn't want to do things for herself that would hurt her children. I don't know what I'm saying, doctor. She's conflicted. So the inner conflict here is, remember the children. She doesn't have to worry about them now because they're at their grandparents. But, she does love her children, but she also wants to be her own person. And she has no intention of revealing anything to this doctor. And he's like, "Well, I would blame you if you don't come to see me. We'll talk of things you never dreamt of talking about. It will do us both good." So he's trying to coax her, and she's not having it. So she lets herself in the gate. All the tearing emotion of the last few hours have fallen away as she walks into her home. She went back to that hour before Adele had sent for her, and her senses kindled afresh. thinking about Robert's words, the pressure of his arms, and the feeling of his lips upon her. She could picture at that moment no greater bliss on earth than possession of the beloved one. She just wants to be with him. His expression of love had already given him to her in part. When she thought that he was there at hand, waiting for her, she grew numb with the intoxication of expectancy. It was so late. He would be asleep, perhaps. She would awaken him with a kiss. So she's anticipating being with Robert. So just imagine this. Like, they had this great moment of mutual understanding, admitting they love each other. Now she's going back home. He's waiting for her. She's haunted by Adele's voice. Think of the children. She meant to think of them. That determination had driven her into her soul like a death wound, but not tonight. Tonight she's going to have Robert. But Robert was not waiting for her in the little parlor. He was nowhere at hand. The house was empty, but he had scrawled on a piece of paper that lay in the lamplight, "I love you, goodbye, because I love you." Oh my gosh. Edna grew faint when she read the words. She went and sat on the sofa. Then she stretched herself out there, never uttering a sound. She did not sleep. She did not go to bed. The lamp sputtered and went out. She was still awake in the morning when Celestine unlocked the kitchen door and came in to light the fire. So this is the lowest of lows. I believe this is the climax of this story. We only have one more chapter left, which we're going to do tomorrow. And I will have some follow-up notes about the entire book when we do that. But just to remind you of the plot triangle, you start with exposition, you have rising action. We've had lots of rising action. We've had, getting her own home. We've had Alcée Arobin. We've had, her dinner party and all these various things. After the climax, which is the hardest challenge that a character faces, then we sort of dive into the resolution, and that's what is happening here. So this is crushing to her. He is saying he loves her, but he won't be with her because he loves her. Like, he doesn't want to do anything unethical or wrong, and this news destroys Edna.